Okay, calling to order the regular meeting of Thursday, November 12th of the Central Marin Fire Council. Rebecca, do you want to take roll?
From Corte, Madera, Councilmember Beckman.
Here.
And Chair Ravazio.
Here.
And from Larkspur, Vice Chair Haroff.
Here.
And Councilmember Way.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you can join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To
the flag
of
of the United
States of America
and to
And
the
to the
republic
republic
for
for
which
which
it
it
stands,
stands,
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with
liberty
liberty.
and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you.
We need a picture of the flag, though, for the next time we do this.
We'll have to get that.
Yes, typically Eli is in the council chambers with the flag behind him.
Oh, okay.
I don't have one in my living room. Sorry.
You should.
It should. It should. Actually, you know what? There's one right outside the window hanging, but okay. Let's move on to open time for public expression. Is there any member of the public who wishes to comment on an item that is not on the agenda? And Rebecca, do you have that on your screen? Because I show participants, but.
Oh, I hadn't had a chance to make you a co-host yet, so you can see. Yes, I do not see any raised hands, and we did not receive any emailed public comments.
Okay. And hearing none, we will move on to presentations. And we have a presentation from the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority by Todd Lando. Is Todd on?
Yes. Todd, do you need to do a
I'm
screen,
on.
or are you just speaking?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Good. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me tonight. I didn't realize I was going to be first up like this. I should have recognized that in the agenda. I appreciate the invitation to talk about the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. And really, I think I'm going to talk about Central Marin Fire Department's hazard mitigation program, which the MWPA is part of and is substantially helping fund this year. I want to bring you up to speed on some of the projects that we're working on, some of the future plans, and hope to answer questions about how things are getting organized and what the program can do for each of your communities. I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. It's going to take 1 second to get this launched. Start the slideshow. All right.
I made you a co-host in case that helps you share easier. Perfect.
Everybody see the screen there? Okay, so the hazard mitigation program, Central Marin Fire, which really, in most ways launched this year at the beginning of this budget year. I came on board July 1st, although, Chief Martin and Chief Schertz and the department had been undertaking a whole variety of hazard mitigation projects historically. This, I think, is the first time it's been under one heading with really a division of the department dedicated to this. We've got 5 funding programs. Some of this might be a bit of a surprise to you. I realized as I was putting this slide together, I'm looking at this program holistically. We've got funding for the 2020-21 budget year from sources that probably certainly don't appear in Central Marin Fire Authority's budget. So, for example, we've been cooperating with PG&E and Fire Safe Marin to manage a grant for roadside hazardous vegetation removal in the Chapman Park neighborhood of Corte, Madera. We've been participating in a CAL FIRE grant for the past year. That grant, the funds are still available to us, and we're actively working on this program. It's part of a $1 million grant. We'll be accessing about $200,000 from that CAL FIRE grant during this budget year. We've got funding from Corte Madera that we're now managing under the Corte Madera Measure F vegetation management program. That's about $150,000 a year. And then, of course, the big program, the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority that launched this July, is bringing in about $408,000 to each of two separate funding programs: the Defensible Space Evaluation and Inspection Program, and then local hazard mitigation funds. And those are the equivalent of 20% of the MWPA tax measure C dollars that are collected in each of the communities. Totals $408,748 a year. That includes a little bit of matching funds that the town of Corte Madera is contributing to. I'll let Chief Martin explain the background on that if anybody's not familiar with it. So those 5 funding programs are currently funding 29 open projects, hazard mitigation projects. Let me see if I can advance my slide here. There we go. But, I don't know how this looks on your screen, if it's even readable at all, but we got 29 open projects. The total budget, when we put all of those programs together, is just under $1.3 million. These projects have allocated just about all of the funds through the end of the fiscal year. Projects, as you can see in the map, are fairly equally spread between the communities. Projects are either occurring or just wrapping up in Greenbrae. Some major projects just starting in Larkspur, I'll talk more about in a second. And several projects are actively underway in Corte Madera or finishing. As far as the total number of projects, because we're also managing the Corte Madera Measure F vegetation management funds, I think we have probably more individual projects occurring in Corte Madera, but this is being spread equitably and really focusing on where the hazards exist in the community to benefit the entire fire authority area. Just some examples. I want to give you guys a handful of examples, talk about some of the individual locations, and show you some before and after pictures. These are projects that we started after July 1st, and most of the photos I'm going to show you are projects that are already complete. This was about a $40,000 matching grant that we provided to an important homeowners association on the east side of Corte Madera. This has a blend of funding coming from Measure F and the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. I think the MWPA funds are largely because I'm managing this project, and the actual funding is coming from Corte Madera Measure F. But you can see the impact that we've had in the to this community, and really this impacts several other neighborhoods immediately adjacent to the HOA that launched this program. It's about a 200-foot wide shaded fuel break, which is where we reduce the hazardous vegetation within 200 feet of structures. So some science behind that 200-foot number I'll talk about more in a minute. But we're focusing on the area within 200 feet of structures primarily in all of the projects we're undertaking. This is a project I'm pleased with this one. The photograph on the right, the after photo, was actually taken this afternoon, late this afternoon. This is the Citron Bowl open space in the city of Larkspur. On the left, you see the photograph is from a fire that occurred this June. You guys probably remember that fire. Small fire, about a quarter acre. Did threaten at least 2 structures. Was extinguished quickly, and it exposed some issues that we've been looking at for quite a while related to invasive hazardous vegetation, white acacia that's overtaking that open space area. Well, we've undertaken, in cooperation with County Parks and Open Space, what I think is a novel, really aggressive program to eradicate the acacia. Open Space has been a great partner. They've helped us complete the environmental review and CEQA documentation just in the last week. We went out to bid and selected a contractor to complete this project. It's going to be done in multiple phases, but the first phase is the cutting and herbicide application by County Parks and Open Space to control the regrowth of the acacia in the meadow there. It's a 21-acre project that has a big impact on not just Larkspur, but really Corte Madera, Kentfield, and Mill Valley as well. You're going to see a lot of this, and we'll be talking about this because it's the start of a much larger project, I think. We've undertaken a number of individual residential assistance projects. This one here is pictured. This was a resident who was identified by the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority inspectors. They made contact with this homeowner. They saw a variety of hazards around the home. They recognized when they spoke to the homeowner that they were elderly and in need of assistance to get this project done. We were able to cooperate with the homeowner, a fantastic woman who, by the way, is 92 years old and has been paying taxes in our community for almost 70 years. We were able to help her eliminate hazardous vegetation, juniper shrubs, Italian cypress in her yard, really undertaking a beautification and safety project to mitigate that hazard from those plants. This is a project that's been funded from multiple sources as well. This was primarily funded by PG&E through that grant I mentioned earlier. This is Sausalito Street, Chapman Park in Corte, Madera, but it's part of a much bigger program. We're tackling roadside vegetation on streets all over the community. This started last year with work from the CAL FIRE grant, and I think we'll have committed about $300,000 to roadside vegetation clearance by the end of the next fiscal year. This is a project. This is another photograph that was taken just today. We've got a lot of projects happening simultaneously. This is the Granada School. We're looking at schools as potentially safety and evacuation issues related to the students who are there, the staff who are there. In this case, the neighboring properties are also threatened by vegetation that sits on about a 9-acre parcel. We're partnering with the school to restore native vegetation underneath eucalyptus trees, remove hazardous invasive plants like broom, blackberry, and acacia, and ultimately significantly reduce the hazard. This project's underway, should be complete by next week. Another photograph of this project. If you take a look at that photo, this is an actual before and after photo taken from the same location. You can see the amount of vegetation that's there and the equipment we're using to remove the dead and down vegetation that's built up for decades in this location. We're leaving all of the native plants and trees intact. This was primarily invasive species and invasive plants that we're growing here, including a big stand of eucalyptus. Not sure that this slide's in order, but we're also managing a residential chipper program. This was really complementary to the hazard inspection program that I'll talk about next. We held, since September of this year, we've held 13 chipper days, neighborhood chipper days that we're now doing door-to-door. Residents can drop off or can place vegetation at the curbside in front of their home. And we have tree companies on contract who come in and remove the vegetation directly from their address. We're doing this in partnership with MWPA and FireSafe Marin. FireSafe Marin is managing a countywide program for the MWPA. And we were able to secure additional chipper days through this program by providing additional funds on top of what the MWPA provided through their core program. So Larkspur and Corte Madera saw more chipper days, I think, per capita than any other communities in the county. We served 390 properties, and our estimates are that we removed about 1,880 cubic yards of vegetation, which is a real testament to the amount of work that the homeowners are doing out in the neighborhoods. And that relates, I think, directly to the defensible space inspections. Since July 1st, we've conducted 2,435 inspections or evaluations or a combination of each in the Larkspur, Corte Madera, Greenbrae. 2,200 of these roughly were completed by the MWPA inspectors. We had teams of 20 inspectors, started in June, worked really through October in our communities, evaluating structures, evaluating defensible space, looking at vegetation management holistically on properties, and then really engaging with homeowners to talk to them about the steps that individual homeowners can take to reduce the hazard on their property. We've also conducted 139 resale inspections. These are done in the town of Larkspur or the city of Larkspur for any residential property. That this is your ongoing program that you guys have been undertaking for years. But we've leveraged these resale inspections. We've incorporated the recommendations and the documentation into the overall hazard reduction and inspection program. And then we've conducted 96 additional complaint-driven inspections. This is when neighbors or residents alert us to hazards they might see in their neighborhood. We're seeing, I think in a lot of ways, tremendous response from the community. That relates back to the chipper days. We were able to time some of the chipper days to follow up immediately after neighborhoods received the evaluations, encourage homeowners to remove hazardous vegetation and teach them what that hazardous vegetation is and provide them immediately with feedback and a way to dispose of the vegetation if they cut it themselves at no cost. Great feedback on both of these programs. I think in a lot of ways, nothing but compliments from the community and a lot of thank yous from neighbors who recognized immediately that they received their first Measure C tax bill and they've already recouped those costs by participating in the chipper program. In some cases, like the photograph I'll show you next, some neighbors were able to participate in this chipper program and probably more than recoup their entire 10-year investment into Measure C. This is vegetation that was generated by one homeowner in East Corte, Madera. Far exceeded the allowed vegetation for a residential chipper day under the MWPA program. But because we are able to supplement in Larkspur and Corte Madera with some additional funding, we were able to remove the limits that homeowners had for the amount of vegetation that would be collected. And we told homeowners that they could put out as much material as they wanted. We encouraged them to put out as much as possible, almost challenging the community. And this particular resident really lived up to that challenge. This alone was about 40 cubic yards of vegetation just this day, and he refilled this whole spot the following day, clearing about 30 years of growth off of the hillside slope below his and his neighbors' homes on a fairly large lot. I'll wrap up just by talking about what I think the future of the program might be. All of the things that you just saw, I think, are going to expand in the coming years. But what we're funding right now from the MWPA is the local hazard mitigation funding, which, if you recall, is equivalent to about 20% or to exactly 20% of the Measure C dollars that are collected in each community. So the remaining with 20% assigned to local mitigation projects, 20% assigned to the hazard evaluation or the residential evaluation program. That leaves 60% of the funding. We're calling it core funding for the MWPA. And we're anticipating that we'll be presenting to the MWPA board through the technical advisory committee and the operations committee potential core projects for the future of the MWPA. These would be larger projects, regional projects that would protect communities maybe on what we call the landscape scale. For Larkspur and Corte Madera, Central Marin Fires area, we've known for a long time that the key concept for a landscape scale fuel reduction project would be to connect a shaded fuel break, that area that within 200 feet of structures where we reduce vegetation, we encourage native forest restoration. We want the native plants like oaks and bays to fill these places in. We want to eliminate invasive plants like broom, acacias, eucalyptus where we can, and pick up decades of downed material, dead vegetation that's built up on the forest floor. We're going to do a lot of raking of the forest floor. This fuel break, we're calling this the core shaded fuel break. This will be something that we'll propose to MWPA and work on. I would anticipate that this is going to be a multi-year project, maybe a 10-year project through the entirety of the MWPA's initial 10 years. This is going to go from the Escal Winery all the way to Camino Alto, the top of Corte Madera Avenue. At 200 feet wide, it's about 5.25 miles long. It encompasses about 275 acres of vegetation. And based on past projects that I've managed, not quite on this scale, but on a smaller scale, if we break this up into sections, this is absolutely achievable for us to create this kind of buffer around the entire district at a cost of somewhere probably in the neighborhood. These are rough estimates at this point, but about $1.4 to $3 million over several years. So I'm saying that this is a 3+ year project to achieve, and I think the results will be pretty remarkable for our communities. Anyhow, I wasn't looking at a clock. I have no idea how long I went, but any questions? Anybody have any?
I just had one quick question. Does that,
Yeah.
looks like that includes Madrone Canyon in Larkspur? You're going to build a fire break all around that too?
Absolutely. This does incorporate Madrone Canyon, and we actually have additional funding just earmarked for Madrone Canyon from another grant that I didn't include in our the budget numbers for this year because we're not sure when it's going to arrive, but it's about another $100,000 we'll be putting in from a California Fire Safe Council grant.
Are there any questions from council members for Todd?
Not a question, Bob, but just an expression of appreciation. This is a huge project, and it's so critically important to the health and safety of our community. And you know, I take advantage myself as a runner, going up and tromping around up on the hills and enjoy our landscape. But it needs to have thoughtful maintenance, and that's what we're getting. And I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the council?
I just have one. Todd, I've always wondered, what is the definition of a shaded fuel break?
It's less a definition and more of a concept. When we use that term, we want people to understand that we are not largely talking about the removal of mature trees. We don't want to remove the canopy of trees. When you look out at vegetation, what you see most often from a distance are treetops, and we want people to understand that the canopy of the native forest that exists here in Marin is not contributing to fire hazard. It's not contributing to these catastrophic fires the way you might think it would. So when we create a shaded fuel break, we're cleaning up the ground underneath the trees to keep a fire from climbing into the treetops. And we want to encourage the shade on the ground. The shade decreases the temperature, increases the amount of moisture that's in the soil and the plants, and reduces the intensity of a fire. So by reducing the intensity of a fire around the perimeter of the community, it will keep a wildfire in the watershed or coming from the north, coming from Kentfield, like we might expect a fire to. It should slow that fire down, reduce its intensity when it reaches the edge of the community, and give the fire department an opportunity to fight the fire.
Thank you. I should have known that answer already, but thank you for explaining that.
Sure.
And just to emphasize that is so important, because there's so much Scotch broom and other kind of low-lying vegetation in our open spaces, and the effort that you guys have been putting into cleaning that out and creating a more open forest environment is terrific. So
Thanks.
Thank you.
It's a big job, and I don't think we can emphasize enough that what we're talking about is really a restoration of the native forest environment. We're not talking
exactly.
We're not talking about removing anything that's native to the landscape. We're going to create better habitat, a healthier forest, which will really provide other benefits to the community as well.
And that's so important, and it's obvious when I go out in our environment and see that happening. It's a delight to see.
Any other questions from the council? Then I guess we'll take any public questions. Rebecca, are there anybody who I can't really see on my screen? So.
There are no attendees with raised hands currently.
Okay, then we'll just
Did not
bring it
receive
back
any
to the
public
council.
comment emails.
Okay. So no public comment or questions. We'll bring it back to the council. And I just wanted to add, I walk pretty regularly on Lower Summit Fire Road, and I've been watching the clearing going up there for the last couple of months, and it is absolutely remarkable. You are doing exactly what you say you are. I mean, I watched all this non-native vegetation get carted out. Trees have been limbed up. It is absolutely remarkable because that is such an incredibly critical escape route for Christmas Tree Hill. And to see the work that's being done on that is really gratifying. So I can't thank you guys enough. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's part of another program that I think we'll probably do a complete presentation on at another meeting once that project is ready to launch. It's related to evacuation routes for probably the most imperiled neighborhood in central Marin, but really.
It probably is, but it's been remarkable what you guys have done on that fire road. It's really incredible. Okay, thank you, Todd. Now we'll go to reports and comments. First off, are there any reports from council members? Looks like I don't see any. Yes, Catherine?
I just want to take the opportunity, like I did at the police council, to commend the professionalism of the men and women of the Central Marin Fire Department. This has been a very hard year for anyone and as a first responder, particularly with the amount of COVID that we initially saw in our community. And I know the first responders of the Central Marin Fire have had to go the extra to respond to the safety and health, not only of themselves, but of the community that they serve with COVID, plus having to do all of the other training, fire suppression, car accidents, and everything else that normally is done. And I particularly would like to commend their response to the huge outbreak that happened at San Quentin. And that really put our community and our service area in a very difficult position to not only continue to serve the residents and businesses of the community, but to also do that mutual aid that was required out there. So I just think it would be from this group, I'd just like to let the chief know that we're very appreciative of the professionalism that's been going on this year, and recognize how incredibly stressful this has been to keep your rigs clean, to keep yourselves safe, to keep your families safe, and to continue to serve the community to the extent that you're able to do that. And hopefully we will have a less stressful year coming up, but I have a feeling this response will have to go on for a bit longer. So anything that this group can do to help support the men and women who work for you, we'd be happy to do that. So
thank you.
That's my comment.
Catherine. Catherine, thank you so much. Any other council member reports? Then we will go to the management committee and talking about the promotion of Fire Chief Ruben Martin. And I'm going to be the first to say congratulations. I'm going to take that opportunity as chair. So thank you and congratulations, but I'm going to turn it over to the committee now. Okay.
Thank you, Chair Fazio, members of the council. I want to start off with what Councilmember Way was talking about. I think my cohort, Dan Schwartz, and I take great pride, as this council does, in the formation of the Central Marin Fire Authority. It's a resilient group. It's an amazing group. We were really creative in building this department. One of those there were two, key steps recently that we made. We brought Todd Lando over in his current role, and you are now seeing the fruits of that labor and that decision that this council made. We're a safer community because of it, and he's outstanding. Another one was I'm going to say it. Actually, I'm going to give Dan credit for this, but we stole, Ruben away from the Ross Valley area, again, for the same concepts of his traits. He had the traits of leadership. He was really forward thinking, and he just really has a great way about himself. And when Chief Shirts retired, running the authority is a difficult task, serving two cities, multiple councils, two managers, two communities. There's a lot to it. And we didn't take that decision lightly, but it was easy for us. And I think this council and, promoting Ruben at the time to interim fire chief. And over the past few months, his performance has really been outstanding. Recently, Dan and I met to talk about Ruben's performance, and it was just a really easy decision for us. The feedback we've gotten from the community, our council, Ruben's cohorts, and his subordinates it's been really consistent. He's outstanding. And so we want to announce tonight that we're removing that acting chief, that word over there. We need to remove acting. Rebecca, can we take that off his title right now on the Zoom call? Make it ceremonial, but we want to make him our permanent chief. We're working on an engagement letter now, and a press release will follow in the coming days. But congratulations, Ruben, you're outstanding, and thanks for all that you do for us.
I think it says interim, so we got to get rid of that too. So
Take it all off. You're the chief. Own it.
just the chief. Just clean that up.
And I'm sorry we can't do this in person, Ruben. And that's a bummer for 2020, but that's the year that we live in. But I can't wait to see you and give you a fist bump. And I know Dan and this council feel the same way. So congrats.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, council members. Wow, it's a little overwhelming. I'm very excited, very humbled, and really looking for the opportunity to be able to help this team grow and lead these men and women into the future. I've got some ideas. I want this organization to be looked at by the outside as, and I know it's kind of cliche, but the gold standard. We want to be the leaders both locally and regionally on how we do how we conduct business in the fire service. Todd Lando is a perfect example. His addition to the team is we're seeing immediate results. So our return on investments with him is going to be enormous. So I want to thank everyone for having the confidence in me, and I know I won't let you down.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Now get to work.
I'm on it.
Thank you, Ruben. And we will now move on to the consent calendar. Is there any member of the council who wishes to remove an item from the consent calendar? And is there any member of the public who wishes to remove an item from the consent calendar? Rebecca?
Not seeing any raised hands.
Not seeing any? Okay, then I will entertain a motion.
I'll move
For
consent items A through C.
Second.
Second, okay. Roll call.
Councilmember Beckman?
Yes.
I'm trying to get this in alphabetical order. Councilmember Way?
Yes.
Vice Chair Haroff?
Yes.
Chair Ravazio?
Yes. Thank you. Then we'll move on to business items. Item A, consideration and possible approval of the 15-year fleet replacement schedule.
Okay.
Todd, is this you or Ruben?
This will be me. Thank you, Chair Ravazio, members of the council. What I'm presenting here today is a plan looking forward to set us up for success in the future. So that way we're never found, surprisingly, that we need a piece of equipment that needs to get replaced. Prior to the formation of Central Marin Fire Authority, both the Corte Madera Fire Department and Larkspur Fire Departments maintained their own fleet of emergency vehicles, both fire engines, ambulances, water tenders, command staff vehicles, and so forth. And they all had a different schedule for replacement on when they needed to either go into a reserve status or to, like I mentioned, to get replaced. In 2018, when Central Marin Fire Authority became formalized, the organization sat down, we started looking at an entire fleet. One is, what's the age of the fleet? What's the condition of the fleet? And what are we going to do moving forward in the future when we need a replacement? Part of that was looking into what kind of capital investments we need to make as an organization to start slowly putting money away so we're never surprised to when one of these pieces of equipment need to get replaced. I'm going to kind of try to share my screen here if I can.
If you run into any problems, I do have it open.
Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and open yours up. It's a little slideshow here.
Okay. Uh-oh. Are you seeing that?
What's that?
Are you seeing the presentation?
Yes, I'm seeing it.
Oh, okay.
So part of evaluating the fleet, what we look at, their vehicles are all, like anything mechanical, all have a finite life. They will go to a certain point to where you start getting so many repairs that they're start getting into a diminishing return. What we evaluate is we start, go to the next slide, Rebecca. So when we start looking at fire engines and fire apparatus, we start following the nationally recognized standards. For the fire service, it's the National Fire Protection Association. So basically they write, say if you're looking for a fire engine, they will write what it needs to have, what size pump, how much hose you need to carry on it, and so forth. And so those are all the standards that are written here. For example, NFPA 1901 will tell you everything you need to do to build a fire engine. 1906, if you want to build a wildland fire engine, it'll tell you exactly what specifications you need. And then the one we're really looking at here is NFPA 1911, which gives you recommendations nationally recognized on the lifespan of a vehicle. And so we start looking at our fleet, and what's our most expensive capital with the fire engines is the engine itself. We're seeing them right now roughly anywhere from $750,000 to $800,000 for each of them, with about a 3% escalator coming through. Let's go to the next slide, Rebecca. So this is what our fleet, what we currently carry. As you can see, to be able to respond, and when anybody calls 911, we have a fleet of 3 frontline Type 1 fire engines. So when you think about a Type 1 fire engine, it's your larger, boxier looking one, basically the ones that respond to house fires. Type 3 wildland engines are your 4-wheel drive engines. And then we have a tactical water tender, which is your big water tank, about 2,000 gallons, that also has a pump on it and can fight fire from it. Then, of course, what we carry here in Central Marin is our frontline paramedic ambulances. And as part of keeping your frontline fleet, you also have to maintain a fleet of reserve ambulances or reserve apparatus in the event that either one breaks down, one goes to the shop, or like we saw recently with the red flag events, we need to upstaff. So we're able to bring in off-duty crews to upstaff some of our reserve apparatus to be able to handle whatever threat we have. Next slide. And so here's just kind of an image of where we're at, kind of the age timeline. NFPA right now, 1911 recommends the lifespan of a fire engine is 15 years. But depending on the mileage, the use, the wear and tear on it, you can actually extend the life of a fire engine up to 20 years. Both Larkspur and Corte Madera, prior to the merger, maintained their fleet at a 10-year frontline status with the frontline rig you go to. And then once it met its 10-year lifespan, it would be pushed back into a reserve status. In 2008, with the downturn of the economy, we realized that we probably couldn't buy engines every 10 years. So we extended that lifespan a little bit by putting our frontline engines out on the field a little bit longer. So now we maintain them at still the 20-year lifespan, but it's 15-year front line and 5-year reserve status. Next one, Rebecca. And once again, here's another components of our apparatus. So if you start looking at the age of our fleet, the water tender is our oldest one. We have a 1997 apparatus, and then our newest one is a 2020. So you've got a large span there. We'll go to the next one, Rebecca. Next slide, please. There you go. And then, so here are reserve engines. And you can tell just by looking at them, the age of them. They've got some wear and tear on them. This Type 3 engine should have been put into reserve status or should have been replaced in 2018. Because of the maintenance schedule we have on it, we're still able to barely keep it on the road, but it's kind of getting to the end of its lifespan. Next slide, please. And then here are our ambulance. Ambulances, because they tend to be used more frequently transporting patients to the hospital, they tend to run more calls than your everyday fire engine because they're responding not only to each of our jurisdictions, whether it's East Corte Madera, Christmas Tree Hill, Green Beret, Larkspur, they'll even go into the Ross Valley. So they tend to get a lot more use out of them. Our ambulances, we usually tend to run a 10-year lifespan with 5 years front end and 5 years in reserve. Next slide, please. And then aside from our frontline firefighting apparatus, we also carry a fleet of command staff vehicles and utility vehicles that are used for a variety of different reasons. Command staff vehicles are for our Todd Lando for fire prevention, myself, and then the chief officers that also respond to command any kind of incident. And then our utility vehicles are used for our firefighters when they go out and to these out-of-county assignments as an overhead. Like, for example, right now we have a firefighter paramedic down at the Creek Fire, which is in Southern California at the Angeles National Forest. He sent us a photo today. He's actually out there as the paramedic on the line looking out for the firefighters who are fighting the fire. And they're actually, believe it or not, they have snow on the ground and they're still out there. Next one, please. And then here's the fleet of our command staff vehicles and they're what they represent. The older Explorer looking one is our 2008 Ford Expedition, which used to be Chief Sprain's vehicle when he was a Corte Madera fire chief. That one we've designated to be decommissioned in 2021. So that one will be eliminated from our fleet and not be replaced. Next slide, please. And then more of our utility vehicles. Next slide, please. So looking at all of our replacements for all our vehicles, we decided to come up with a schedule that made sense both economically for us as an organization, where we're not expending too much capital at once, but yet our fleet is being replaced at a timely manner. And here in this schedule, it shows you the fleet replacement by years of service. For example, staff vehicles have a 10-year frontline. And then once they're done being frontline staff vehicles, those will then in turn become your utility vehicles. So as you can see, we're rotating them from front to reserve. And then when they've met their life expectancy, then we go ahead and retire them out. Next slide, please. Here's a different way to look at it in a bar graph. For example, it'll show you what day we purchased it, when we anticipate the reserve date is, and when we can look at it and to see when we should start retiring these pieces of equipment out. Because it starts getting to that point, as I mentioned earlier, those diminishing returns, where your costs to keep them on the road exceed the cost of purchasing one. Next slide, please. And then once again, here is some of our other vehicles on a different way of viewing other timelines visually. And then once again, like I mentioned, the command staff vehicles for our battalion chiefs that are out running 911 calls, when they've met their life expectancy of 8 years, we don't get rid of them and sell them. What they end up doing is they become our utility vehicles. So as you can see, we're slowly rotating them in. Next slide, please. And so this is what we're recommending for council to approve tonight, is our recommended replacement by fiscal year. We kind of broke it down to, so that way we can look at it by fiscal year, what kind of capital we need to expend for our fleet replacement. For example, fiscal year 2021, we're proposing to replace fire engine 14. And it'll tell you when their expected reserve date is, when the purchase date was, and what the anticipated total cost of the vehicle will be. And so this way it sets up a plan for us as an organization and creates that recipe for us to be successful in the future. That way we're not caught off guard. This is a binder that'll sit there, so if we can always pick it up, when do we need to purchase a vehicle? And at least it tells us what kind of capital we need to start putting away for the future. Next slide, please. And what we've been seeing traditionally is, especially with fire engines, we've been seeing the costs go up annually approximately about 3%. And this has been going on for the last decade or so. Every year is about a 3% escalator. So we ended up creating was a 15-year investment for the organization, where it would tell you in what fiscal year, how much each contributing member would have to contribute in order for, at the end of the 15 years, we're basically made whole and all of our equipment has been purchased. And these prices have a 3% escalator in them in the contributions. So that way we're always staying with the expenditures of the engines moving forward. So what this does as a fiscal impact for us as an organization is having the commitment to have the commitment of the fiscal impact of $5.185 million over 15 years, which sounds like a big number, but if you spread it out over 15 years, you're only spending $130,000 to $150,000 a year. And if we're planning ahead and making a vehicle replacement fund that we started this year, and if we keep putting funds into it, we should stay on top of our fleet replacement without having to go into the negative. Next slide. And at this point, I'll open it up to any questions that you have.
Okay, are there any questions from council members for the chief? Yes, Catherine.
Ruben, I have one. I'm interested in and curious about whether there has been designs to the contemporary fire apparatus that enhances the firefighter's safety. So for instance, with a paramedic rig, they now have hydraulic lifts so that the patient is lifted in a hydraulic manner rather than risk the injury to a firefighter's back by having to lift the. Are there things like that on current apparatuses that are designed for firefighter safety? For instance, I'm just hypothetically thinking ways in which ladders are lifted hydraulically.
Yeah, it is. And that comes in part with our committee here, our engine or apparatus specifications committee. They get together and figure out what do we need, what's going on with our current fleet, and how can we improve it. One of the things that they're looking at is right now they're placing the engine or the ladders on the new engine that we're proposing is on a hydraulic lift where it'll actually lift it up to its storage position, then lower it down to where it's ergonomically feasible to remove. They have also shifted where the tank is, so it will lower where you pull your hose from. So that way firefighters aren't stepping up, putting 50, 60 pounds of equipment on and then have to step down 2 or 3 feet. Other safety measures are they're trying to get as much loose equipment out of the cabs, which is the inside of the engine. In the event that there is an accident, they don't want loose equipment flying around. So a lot of that equipment is being stored now in compartments versus inside of the fire engine.
Oh, that's great. It's nice to hear because I like to see the safety designs that enhance the safety for the employee, for the worker, and for the firefighter and for the paramedic. So they don't.
And then NFPA puts those standards out. They get updated, similar to our regular code books. They get updated every couple of years with the new safety technologies that are out there.
Great. And lastly, just like we did with the police council when we were retiring some vehicles, is there a mechanism in which fire equipment is later sold on an auction market, or what do we do with retired vehicles?
So they get surplused. For example, we surplused an engine approximately 2 years ago. We sold it to Marin County Fire Department because they were in need of one that they unfortunately got into an accident with. So we were able to sell it to them. Other ones, we've put it out on an auction block, or we've put it out to staff members who want to buy them. And we put it out as a closed bid and let an employee purchase the vehicle. In the past, they've been rotated into other departments within either the city or the town.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question? No? Okay, then let's
Hey, Bob, you just went on mute.
sorry. Rebecca, is there anybody who wants to comment on this? I can't.
I'm not
just
seeing
see
any raised
participants.
hands from attendees, and we did not receive any emailed public comment.
Okay. Then we will bring it back to the council for any discussion, comments, or a possible motion. Anybody?
I'll move the item consideration and approval of the 15-year fleet replacement schedule.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second from Eli. Take a vote, Rebecca.
Councilmember Beckman,
Yes.
Councilmember Way,
Yes.
Vice Chair Haroff, he's muted. A yes? And Chair Ravazio.
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to item B. Thank you. Consideration and possible authorization for CMFA staff to complete and submit the HGAC by contract application for interlocal cooperative purchasing.
That'll be me
Ruben
as
again?
well.
And before we go on to that, Rebecca, it took me a moment to unmute myself, so I voted yes on that last item.
Thank you, Chair Ravazio. So here today to present, so this is also part of our fleet replacement purchasing program, is HGAC by, or is the Houston Galveston Area Council. It's a consortium of local governments that come together that will allow us to have more purchasing power when we're out on the open market. For example, for us as a small agency, if we would go directly to a manufacturer to purchase something, we don't have a lot of purchase power because we're only buying one piece of equipment, as compared to, say, San Francisco Fire, who may go to the same manufacturer and purchase 10 to 20 pieces of equipment. They're going to get a much lower price. And then by applying into the HGAC by interlocal cooperative, what it does, it puts us into a pool of local government agencies that already have bids out with these local manufacturers. So it allows us to go in at a lower price because we have a much bigger purchasing power. For example, with purchasing a new engine and being part of this co-op, you automatically get a $32,000 reduction in price from a fire engine. And so is my recommendation that we go ahead and just fill out the application. There is no fiscal impact to the agencies or each of the municipalities. All it is just filling out the application, submitting it, and saying that we're going to purchase, or we're proposing to purchase equipment through HGAC buy.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the council for the chief?
Makes complete sense to me. The more money we save, the better.
Any other questions? Then we will open it up for public comment. Any member of the public wish to address this? Rebecca?
Seeing any raised hands.
Okay. Then we will close public comment and bring it back to the council for comments or a motion, which I think we need on this, right? Yeah.
Okay, I'll move approval of consideration of possible authorization of the CMFA staff to complete and submit the HGAC by contract application.
And this is Kevin. I'd be happy to second that motion.
Thank you.
Councilmember Beckman,
Yes.
Councilmember Way,
Yes.
Vice Chair Haroff,
Yes.
Chair Ravazio.
Yes. Moving on to item C, consideration and possible approval to purchase a new Pierce fire engine from Golden State Fire Apparatus for a total estimated cost of $792,000 or $792,598.
That'll be me
This is
again.
you again.
Thank you, Chair Ravazio, members of the council. So I'm here to present for your consideration to authorize us to go into contract with Golden State Fire Apparatus to go ahead and purchase a new fire engine per the recommended fleet replacement schedule. In April of this year, our apparatus committee began preliminary talks with representatives of Pierce Manufacturing and Golden State Fire Apparatus to come up with what would it cost if we got an engine that basically met the requirements that we needed here within Central Marin. So they began the talks. They finally came back to us in November. So you can think about from April to November is just a preliminary talks, looking at blueprints, basically your wish list of what you need on an engine, just to get you your basics. And then this next portion here is authorization to go ahead and go into contract with Golden State Fire Apparatus to go ahead and start constructing the engine that we went ahead and pre-specified of what our needs are. And so they traditionally, fire engines usually from start to finish, from start of construction to the end, usually takes about a year, believe it or not. And so we've already started that preliminary. Once we sign the contract, it should be within 6 to 8 months, 9 months before we would get delivery of an apparatus if we would to purchase one. And then when we go into purchasing, when we start talking about that, there's 3 ways traditionally that fire departments purchase vehicles. One is they'll either super fund the purchase, meaning they'll buy it cash. The other one would be like a lease finance option, or a lease return buyback option, which is similar to leasing a vehicle. You do a 2 or 3 year lease, and then you do a balloon payment for what's left. Or you take what they call as a lease finance option, which is basically financing it, doing a 5-year finance for the vehicle, and it spreads out your capital over those 5 years, so that way you're not expending that $800,000 right up front. Golden State Fire Apparatus works with a leasing partner called Community Leasing Partners. They've provided a preliminary bid if we're interested in it, where for a 5-year lease, I believe it's $153,000 a year for the replacement of it over the next 5 years. And then they also give you a schedule for a 7-year and a 10-year. It is my recommendation that based on us as a new organization, not having that fleet replacement full fund capital, is our best option would probably be to go to a lease finance option over a 5-year period.
Okay, thank you. That's it?
Yes, that's it.
Okay. Any questions from the council on one of the most detailed reports I've ever seen on the Central Marin Fire Council?
It's very long.
It is. I was going to ask just about the hydraulic ladder rack deployed lights to see if you knew, but I won't. So.
Oh yeah, that was pretty
Page
detailed.
45. Page 45.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure you had all the information. In case you're interested what size ladder we were getting.
We do. If there are no questions from the council for the chief, we'll open it up to the public for comments.
I'm not seeing any raised hands, and we did not receive any emails.
Okay, then we will bring it back to the council for any comments or a possible motion to approve.
Sounds good.
I'll take that as a motion from Catherine.
All right. Consideration. I will move business item 6. I mean C.
C. Purchasing a new fire engine.
Yes.
Second.
Second from Eli.
Councilmember Beckman,
Yes.
Councilmember Way,
Yes.
Vice Chair Haroff,
Yes, yes.
Chair Ravazio.
Yes. Okay, thank you. And on to item D, consideration and possible action to adopt resolution 2020-08, establishing dates and times for the regular meetings of the Fire Council and the Central Marin Fire Authority for 2021. Is this you again, Ruben?
I believe it is. I'll take this one. Thank you, Chair Ravazio. Yeah, so in November of last year, when we first became a newly formed agency, we sat down at a regular scheduled meeting and presented the meeting schedules for the following year. So once again, we're there again, and resolution 2020-08 sets the dates for the Fire Council for next year, which coincide with the Police Council, CMPA, so we're shortly behind them. So our meetings for next year will be the second Thursday in February, the second Thursday in May, the second Thursday in August, And the third Thursday in November, as mentioned earlier in a prior meeting, the second Thursday in November is a federal holiday and is Veterans Day. So we're recommending that the meeting be moved to the third Thursday in November. And then going back to our meetings will be scheduled at 6:30 or shortly there following the Central Marin Police Authority Council meeting. So it is my recommendation to go ahead and approve Resolution 2020-08, establishing dates and times for the regular meetings of the Fire Council for the year 2021.
Thank you. Any questions for the chief on that? Okay, then we'll go to public. Any public comment on that? Rebecca?
Raised hands from attendees and no emails were received.
Okay, then we'll bring it back to the council for discussion and a possible motion.
I move the resolution.
Is there a second?
Sure.
Second by Catherine. Rebecca?
Councilmember Beckman,
Yes.
Councilmember Way,
Yes.
Vice Chair Haroff,
Yes.
Chair Ravazio.
Yes. Okay, then with that, we are done. We are adjourned. Thank you so much. And Ruben, again, congratulations. We're thrilled to have you. And thank you, everybody, and have a great Thanksgiving.